Betrayed on Karen 9. The sky above Karen 9 was dark red, filled with ash clouds and lightning that never stopped. The ground was sharp black rock, broken like glass. It was not a place made for humans. Jace Core lay on that broken ground, bleeding and still. His arm was cut. His ribs hurt with every breath. His helmet was cracked. He could barely move. And worst of all, he was alone. The others had left him. They said it was an ambush. They said there was no time. But Jace knew better. Captain Drax gave the order. "Leave him," he said coldly. "He's dead weight." Then the shuttle lifted into the sky, leaving Jace behind. Now, as thunder rolled across the sky, Jace opened his eyes. He groaned in pain and pulled himself to his knees. His hand pressed against his side. Blood. Not good. He looked around. Ash blew across the empty rocks. Strange shapes moved in the fog. Beasts, maybe, or worse. Karen 9 was full of stories. People said nothing came back alive from this place. Jace gritted his teeth. He wasn't ready to die. He grabbed a broken metal rod from the ground and used it as a crutch. Slowly, step by step, he walked. His comm link was dead. No signal. No help. No food. No water. Just him and the planet that wanted to kill him. He kept moving for hours, maybe more. Time didn't feel real here. The sky stayed the same dark red. The wind howled. Then he saw it. A cave, half covered in ash and rock. He dragged himself inside and collapsed. Darkness. When Jace opened his eyes again, he was not alone. A sound, deep breathing, heavy and slow, came from the back of the cave. Something big was in there. He reached for his knife, the only weapon he had left. His hand shook. Then he saw it. Two glowing blue eyes. They were low to the ground but far apart, too wide to be human. A deep growl echoed from the shadows. The ground shook slightly. Jace's heart pounded. The creature stepped into the light. It was huge, at least 3 times the size of a man, covered in dark armor like metal and bone mixed together. It had a tail like a whip and long claws that clicked against the stone floor. A Threxen. He had heard stories about them. Part beast, part machine. Untamable. Killers of men. The Threxen lowered its head and sniffed the air. Jace didn't run. He couldn't. He just stared, waiting for death. But the Threxen didn't attack. It stepped closer and stopped in front of him. Then it knelt. Its head touched the ground, and it let out a strange, low sound. Not a growl. Something softer. Jace blinked in disbelief. The Threxen was bowing to him. Why? How? He didn't understand, but something in his chest, something felt different. Warm. Alive. He reached out and touched the Threxen's head. It didn't move. Suddenly, a loud beep came from outside the cave. A signal, one of the team's emergency beacons, left behind, blinking. Jace looked outside. Lights appeared in the sky. Not rescue ships. Not his team. Something worse. Enemy drones. Scavengers. Machines left by ancient invaders. They hunted anything with a pulse. They followed the beacon. And they were coming. Jace backed into the cave. The Threxen growled, standing tall. Its body shimmered with light, strange symbols glowing on its side. Then, without a word, it moved toward the cave entrance. Jace watched as it climbed onto a rock, roared into the storm, and waited. For a moment, Jace forgot the pain. He forgot the betrayal. He felt something he hadn't felt since the shuttle left. Hope. This beast, this monster, had chosen him. And together, they were not going down without a fight. Outside, the drones came closer. Inside, the last man left for dead stood with the creature that bowed to no one but him. Beast bonded. The cave was quiet now. Only the soft crackle of ash blowing past its entrance reminded Jace that the outside world was still deadly. He sat beside the Threxen, this massive beast that had not only spared him but protected him. In the shifting shadows, its eyes glowed faintly, and Jace couldn't stop staring at them. There was something more in that gaze, something that felt human, intelligent, watching him, not like prey, but like a partner. He hadn't even given it a name yet, but one came to him now. Karn, he whispered, almost without thinking. The Threxen blinked, then made a low, rumbling sound, as if it understood. Jace didn't know why Karn had chosen him. Maybe it was the blood, maybe the pain, or maybe it was the strange mark he noticed now glowing faintly on the back of his hand, something he never had before the cave. A symbol, circular, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. It wasn't human, but it wasn't Karn's either. It felt ancient. In the days that followed, man and beast became something more than just survivors. Jace learned Karn's moods, his signals, his sounds. When Karn growled low, danger was near. When he sniffed the air, something important was coming. They hunted together. They slept side by side. Karn even let Jace ride on his back as they crossed miles of black wasteland, searching for shelter and food. It wasn't just survival anymore. It was a bond. One morning, they came upon ruins, massive stone structures buried under mountains of ash and time. Jace didn't know what they were at first, but Karn stopped in front of a tall, broken wall and placed his clawed hand on it. Lights flickered. Lines glowed across the stone. Words in a language Jace couldn't read moved like smoke. And then, Jace understood. Not through words, through feeling, through memory. Like the wall had spoken directly into his mind. He saw visions, long ago battles, giant beasts walking beside warriors with glowing arms, a war against something black and endless. He saw others like Karn, dozens of them, bonded to humans, guardians of a hidden power. Then, just as suddenly, the vision ended. Jace fell to his knees, dizzy. Karn stood above him, calm, watching. He looked down at his glowing mark again. It burned hot now, responding to something. Jace was beginning to see the truth. He hadn't been chosen by accident. Karn hadn't saved him out of mercy. This bond was fate. But peace never lasted long on Karen 9. They found shelter in the belly of a broken starship, buried deep in the cliffs, half-eaten by time. Karn growled before they even stepped inside. The air was wrong. Inside the ship, the walls were scratched with messages in blood. Equipment smashed. And in the dark corner, something moved. A man, or what was left of one. His eyes were wide, his skin pale, his voice broken and full of madness. He screamed when he saw Jace, shouting about the bond, calling Karn a devil. Then he lunged. Jace barely dodged, but the man was fast, too fast for someone who should have been dead. He fought like an animal. Rabid, Karn stepped between them and slammed the man against the wall with a single swipe. Bones cracked. The man fell. But before he died, he grabbed Jace's wrist and whispered, "You can't break the curse. The Leviathan sees you." Then he was gone. Silence filled the ship once again. Jace sat in the dust, breathing hard, heart pounding. He looked down and saw that the dead man had the same glowing mark on his hand. Identical. It wasn't just a gift. It was a warning. Ghosts of the Ashlands. The ship was silent again. The strange man, once human, now lay still on the floor. His pale eyes, wide open, stared at nothing. Jace stood over him, chest tight, skin cold. The man's final words echoed in his mind. "The Leviathan sees you." What did it mean? And why did he have the same glowing mark on his hand? Karn didn't move. He stared down at the body, growling low, as if he had seen this before. As if he understood. Jace searched the ruined ship, needing answers. He moved through broken halls, shattered walls, crushed panels. Everything was covered in dust and silence. Then, tucked away inside the control room, he found it. A small terminal still glowing with weak power. Most of it was dead, unreadable. But one file remained. Water log. Cycle 412. Jace tapped it. The screen flickered, and then images appeared, fast flashes of other warders riding Threxens like Karn. Some were noble, leading armies. Others looked wrong, twisted, eyes black, mouths open in silent screams. And behind all of them, in the sky above, a shadow, a shape too big to understand. A being with no face, only darkness. Jace couldn't breathe. The screen pulsed red. A single word appeared in an alien script, but somehow he understood it. Leviathan. The room trembled. Jace backed away, but not from fear. From something else, something alive. He turned, and the wall behind him shifted. It wasn't metal. It was bone. Dozens of skulls were fused into the ship's hull, human and alien, all with the same mark carved into their foreheads. Jace stumbled outside, hands shaking. Karn followed, silent but alert. The wind had changed. The red sky above seemed darker now, more angry. And in the distance, beyond the cliffs, something was watching. Not a beast, not a drone, something older, something Jace couldn't yet see, but could feel. That night, Jace didn't sleep. He sat beside Karn at the edge of the cliffs, staring at the ashlands below. "This planet," he said softly, "it's not just dangerous. It's cursed." Karn let out a slow breath through his nose, a sound halfway between a growl and a sigh. The next morning, they traveled south, following a trail of old stone markers Karn seemed to know. The terrain grew stranger, trees made of crystal, rivers that glowed in the dark. Then they reached it, an ancient gate half buried in the ground. Karn pressed his claw into the stone. It responded. Lights spread across the gate like veins waking from a long sleep. The door opened. Inside was a massive chamber, round, silent, filled with walls that moved like water. Jace walked forward, and the walls lit up with moving images. They showed a story. A long time ago, a race far older than humans created the Threxens. They made beasts not as weapons, but as guardians, protectors, companions, each one connected to a single warrior, a warder, chosen by fate, not force. These pairs kept the balance of power between stars, until the Leviathan came. A godless thing from the void. It destroyed entire systems, infected minds, turned warders into monsters. Those who fought it left behind only ruin and warnings. Now Jace was one of them. He didn't ask for this, but the mark was on his skin. The beast stood by his side, and something was coming. He placed his hand on the final wall. It pulsed bright. A signal shot into the sky, straight through the clouds, out into space. Jace gasped. "What did I just do?" Karn growled, turning toward the cave entrance. They both knew the answer. He had called out, and something out there had heard. Return of the dead man. The stars over Earth looked the same, peaceful, calm. No one had any idea what was coming. Captain Drax stood tall before the Galactic Command Council, a hero in their eyes. He spoke of victories and tough decisions. He never mentioned Jace Core, not once. In his report, the failed mission on Karen 9 was nothing but a casualty of war. A regrettable loss of a soldier during retreat. That was all. Just words. Polished lies spoken by a man with cold eyes. But in the far corner of the starport, someone was watching him. A ship arrived quietly. No banners. No escort. The ship looked alien, scared, patched, humming with strange blue energy that didn't match any known tech. The port's scanners tried to read it and failed. Warning lights blinked, but no one understood what they meant. And then the ramp dropped. Out stepped a man, cloaked, armored in jagged metal, eyes glowing faintly with the same blue as the ship. His face, rough with ash and time, turned slowly toward the guards. They raised their weapons, until they saw what followed him. A roar cut through the air. The ground trembled. The guards dropped their weapons as the beast emerged behind the man. Towering, armored, marked with glowing ancient runes. Karn, the Threxen that legends said no one could tame. Except now, it walked calmly behind the man it had chosen. Soldiers froze, civilians ran, and Captain Drax turned pale. The dead man had returned. Jace stood at the edge of the starport, wind blowing through his torn cloak. The sky was calm, but inside, a storm had begun. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. He simply raised his hand and showed them the mark. Glowing, alive. The council demanded answers. Drax tried to block him. "He's dangerous," he shouted. "He's been twisted by alien tech." Jace's voice was quiet, but it stopped the whole room. "You left me to die, but the planet woke something inside me. And it's not done waking." They didn't believe him. They couldn't. Not until the sky cracked open. A strange ripple passed over Earth's upper orbit. Satellites blinked out. Energy readings spiked. Ships failed to launch. Above the clouds, something massive appeared, then vanished just as quickly. Just a glimpse. A shadow. But enough to silence the room. Jace stepped forward. It saw the signal. It's coming. The council dismissed him, called it a fluke. Drax called him unstable, but some in the room, the old ones, the veterans who had heard stories from the fringe, recognized the signs. The Leviathan. That night, Drax made a decision. He couldn't let Jace live. Orders were sent in secret. A kill team assembled. Earth's best hunters, trained for silence. They moved under cover of darkness, surrounding the warehouse where Jace stayed. Karn was sleeping nearby. They thought it would be easy. It wasn't. The first soldier barely stepped through the door before Karn was awake. Eyes lit with fury, claws cutting the air. Jace didn't even have to give a command. Karn tore through the team like they were paper. But Jace didn't let it go too far. He stopped the beast with a single word. Enough. He walked among the broken remains of the team. One soldier, still alive, begged, "What are you?" Jace looked down at him. "I'm what you created. I was a soldier. Now I'm something else." Word spread like wildfire across the network, not from official sources, but from whispers, leaks, scared voices. The dead man had returned. The beast bowed to him. And Earth had tried to kill him again. But this time, people listened. Not the leaders, not the powerful. The people. They saw the footage. They saw Karn. They saw Jace standing between death and mercy. And they asked a new question. What if he's the only one who can stop what's coming? The hunt begins. The galaxy spoke his name now, not with praise or fear, but with wonder. Jace Kor, a man left for dead on a cursed planet, who returned riding a beast from legend. Some called him a traitor, others called him a weapon. But among the ordinary people, the forgotten miners, the starving colonists, the exiles, he was something else. He was proof that the powerful could be challenged, that the old legends were real. And somewhere in the stars, the Leviathan stirred. Jace felt it like a whisper in the back of his mind. A low, constant hum. He couldn't sleep without seeing visions, strange worlds burning, warders falling into shadow, entire planets consumed by darkness. Karn felt it too. The beast had grown restless. Even in sleep, his armored body twitched, his deep growls vibrating through the walls of their hidden ship. The connection between man and beast had grown deeper. They didn't speak with words, but they didn't need to. They had a mission now. Jace began moving from world to world, not for revenge, but for answers. He followed ancient signals, buried in forgotten satellites and sealed archives. The more he uncovered, the more he realized. He wasn't the only one. There had been other warders, long before Earth knew the stars. Some had died, some had gone mad, and a few had joined the Leviathan. He found their graves on the ice moons of Velaris, on the sand-covered ruins of Delta Prime, on a shattered asteroid belt called the Ring of Teeth, where nothing grew but memory. But in those ruins, he found more than bones. He found Threxens, trapped, hunted, chained like monsters. Jace freed the first one on a broken cargo freighter orbiting a gas giant. The beast had been starved, beaten, drugged. Its armor was cracked, its fire almost gone. But when Jace stepped forward, showed the glowing mark on his hand, the creature recognized him, not as master, but as kin. Karn roared beside him, and the broken Threxen joined them without a sound. Then another, and another. Soon, they were more than a man and a beast. They were a force, a growing pack of legend, each Threxen a living warship. And behind them, whispers grew louder. The people began to follow. Not soldiers, not governments. The forgotten ones. The rebels. The broken. They didn't care about the politics. They didn't care about Drax or the council or the official lies. They had lost too much already. They had nothing to believe in, until they saw Jace ride through the fire with a pack of beasts beside him and hope in his eyes. But Jace wasn't building an army. He was preparing for a war no one understood. On the edge of known space, they found the moon of Grath. Karn had led them there, without maps or directions, just instinct. The moon was dead, gray and cold, but something ancient pulsed below its surface. In a hidden chamber buried beneath the crust, Jace found it. A mural, carved into the wall by hands long turned to dust. It showed a circle of warders, 7 in total, each standing with a Threxen, facing something enormous. A black shape, its form twisted like smoke, its mouth wide like a gate to the void. Beneath it, flames, cities crumbling, stars going out like dying candles. And in the center of the mural, a single warder stood alone, hand raised, the mark on his palm shining like the sun. Jace stepped back, heart racing. The mural was a warning, a prophecy. Karn stood silent, unmoving, staring at the mural as if it was a memory. Jace whispered, "It's real. The Leviathan. It's coming." He didn't know what it wanted. He didn't know if it could be killed. But he knew this. He wasn't ready. Not yet. As he stepped away from the wall, his comms buzzed with static. Then a voice, cracked, but human. "Jace Core, I know what you are. I've seen what's behind the stars. You're too late." It wasn't Drax. It was someone else. A warder. Still alive, but twisted. The Leviathan rises. The message echoed in Jace's mind long after it ended. That voice. It was broken, heavy, and twisted by something ancient. But underneath the madness, he heard something worse than rage. Sorrow. It wasn't just a warning. It was a confession. Somewhere out there, a warder had survived and surrendered to the Leviathan. Jace didn't speak for a long time after that. He just stood there in the cold moon chamber, staring at the mural, his thoughts spinning like a storm. Karn sat beside him, massive and still, his eyes fixed on the same wall, as if remembering. The silence was deep. Then the ground shook. A tremor rolled through the cave, soft at first, then stronger, heavier. Rocks tumbled. Dust rose. Jace turned and sprinted up the winding path out of the chamber, his heart pounding harder than ever. Karn moved fast beside him, armor clanking, breath hot. They reached the surface and saw the sky torn open. Not with fire, with shadow. Something vast had pierced the edge of the system, just barely visible beyond the black horizon. A dark curve stretching across the stars. Not a ship, not a planet. Something alive. Jace couldn't even measure its shape. It looked like a scar in space, like the universe itself was trying to turn away. The Leviathan had arrived. Back on Earth, panic spread like wildfire. Ships went dark. Stations lost signal. People screamed about the eye in the sky. Every news feed showed the same thing: a dark wave approaching from deep space, swallowing signals, twisting sensors, warping gravity. Scientists argued, leaders denied, and Captain Drax froze. He had built his whole life on control, on power, on climbing ranks, rewriting truth, burying those who got in the way. But now, there was nothing he could hide. The shadow over Earth wasn't a story, it was a sentence. The Council called an emergency war council. Reaching out across all allied systems, Jace was summoned, but not as a criminal this time. As a last hope. He arrived with Karn and 4 other Transcends. The council chamber, once filled with pride and politics, fell into silence as the beasts entered. Eyes wide, hands shaking, Jace stood before them, no longer a soldier, no longer even fully human. The mark on his hand burned with new fire, pulsing in rhythm with Karn's breathing. "I told you it was coming," he said quietly. The room said nothing. "I don't want your medals. I don't need your apologies. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because if we don't unite, right now, you won't have anything left to protect." Drax stood, defiant as ever. "And what exactly do you think you can do, Order?" His voice was sharp, but his eyes betrayed fear. Jace stepped forward. "I'm not the only one." He activated the holomap. Around the galaxy, markers lit up, places he had been, places he had called out to. Signals answered. Warder relics activated. Forgotten Transcends, hiding deep in worlds long ignored, had started moving again. Ancient power was waking. The galaxy had forgotten the old war. The Leviathan hadn't. Still, it wasn't enough. Jace knew it. Karn knew it. The Transcends were strong, but the Leviathan could corrupt. It didn't just destroy planets, it twisted them. Turned allies into monsters. Turned minds into cages. Jace had seen the ruins. He had fought the broken man on the freighter. And now he had heard the voice of a fallen warder. One of their own. They had to act before the Leviathan reached the core worlds. The Council finally agreed to grant Jace command, not of their armies, but of their trust. He was free to lead the resistance his way. And he knew what that meant, a final strike. Not at the shadow, but at its heart. Jace left Earth that same night, flying through shattered space with Karn and his growing pack of Transcends. He followed the signal left in the voice, the last echo of the twisted warder. It led to a dead system called Nexus, long erased from maps. But as they crossed into the dark zone, Jace felt it, like pressure in his skull. The stars around them dimmed. The cold grew deeper. The ship's lights flickered. Even Karn growled nervously. The Leviathan's presence wasn't just seen. It was felt. And then they saw it. A throne, floating in space, built from debris, bones, and broken worlds. Upon it sat a man, human once, now changed. Eyes glowing black, veins pulsing with darkness. A warder, but not. The fallen warrior smiled. "You came, too late, brother." Behind him, the shadow moved. Jace gripped Karn's armor tightly. No more running. The final battle had begun. He who commands the beast. The void was silent, too silent. Stars that should have burned with fierce light now hung like faded memories, dim and distant. Time itself felt slower here, heavier, like every second was a battle. Jace hovered in orbit over Nexus, staring at the throne of ruin and the man who once stood for everything he believed in. The fallen warder, once like him, now bent to the will of the Leviathan. The shadow writhed behind the man like a living storm, stretching across light years, pulsing with hunger. And somewhere deep within it, a mind watched them all. "You've come to die," the fallen warder said, rising from the throne, black veins creeping across his neck like roots digging into flesh. "Just like I did." Jace said nothing at first. He stared into the eyes of the man who once wore the mark. the same mark now glowing like fire on his own hand. Karn stood beside him, towering and calm, but Jace felt the tension through their bond. The Threxens behind him shifted uneasily, their armor humming with rising energy. They knew this was not just a fight, it was the fight. "You weren't meant to fall," Jace finally said. "You were meant to protect us all." The man smiled, tired and sad. "I tried. I really did. But it doesn't matter how strong we are. It doesn't matter how many Threxens we wake, or how many beasts follow. In the end, it whispers, it promises, and when it touches your mind, you forget who you were." He raised his arm. From the Leviathan's darkness, creatures poured forth. Not ships, not machines. Corrupted beasts. Twisted Threxens with broken spines and screaming eyes, glowing with black light, mouths full of ash. Once noble, now slaves. Jace drew his breath in. His heart raced. The Threxens at his back growled in fury. And then they charged. Space erupted into chaos. It wasn't like any battle humanity had known. This wasn't tactics and formations. This was ancient rage. Jace and Karn flew into the center of it, beast and rider, mind and muscle moving as one. Karn slammed into a corrupted creature, tearing through its warped armor with a roar that shook the stars. Jace launched from his back, wielding a blade of fused alien tech and human steel, striking with precision. Every strike lit up his mark. Every kill fueled the fire inside him. But for every beast that fell, two more rose. The Leviathan whispered. It sent illusions, memories of Jace's past, his childhood, his old squad, even the moment he was left for dead on Karen 9. He saw Drax's cold face. He heard his mother's voice. He saw Karn fall again and again, crushed, broken. It wasn't real, but it felt real. His knees buckled. The visions overwhelmed him. The mark on his hand flared wildly, screaming in pain. And then, Karn roared, a deep, earth-shaking roar that broke through the lies. Jace snapped back. He saw Karn injured, surrounded, still standing, still fighting. And in that moment, something broke free inside him. Jace no longer fought with just his body. He reached out with his mind, with his bond. The Threxens around him answered, not with words, but with unity. A tide of will, ancient and raw. Together, they pushed back the darkness. He faced the fallen warder once more. The man was waiting. They clashed, blade to blade, beast to beast. It wasn't just strength now. It was belief. Jace fought for the forgotten, the lost, the ones still fighting in the dark. The warder fought with bitterness, driven by the hollow promises of a voice that had taken his soul. They were evenly matched, until Jace opened his hand. He didn't strike. He reached out. "I forgive you." The fallen warder froze. His sword trembled. For a second, just a second, his eyes cleared. The darkness hissed. The Leviathan roared. But it was too late. The bond broke. The man collapsed to his knees, whispering, "Thank you," as the black veins turned to dust. And with that, the Leviathan screamed in rage. It surged forward, all of it, desperate to consume Jace in one final blow. Jace stood tall, Karn by his side, and the Threxens gathered behind him. They unleashed everything. Their will, their light, their bond. The mark on Jace's hand flared so bright, it split the darkness. And in that blinding moment, Jace stepped into the shadow and shattered it from within. Silence. A slow wind blew across the moon of Grath. Years later, children played among the stone ruins. A woman told a story. They say he died that day. Or maybe not. Maybe he became part of the stars. And the beast, a child asked. They say it still watches, she smiled. Some nights, when the sky is very dark, you can hear a roar in the distance, a promise that the darkness will never return. Because he is still out there, The man who rose from the ash. A shooting star flew across the sky, and far away, deep in the stars, something big moved quietly across a forgotten world. A beast, alone, but never without purpose. For he bows to no one but the one he chose.